everybody, my name is Saloni Joshi. I'm the CEO at EcoEnclose, and today we're here to talk about corrugate fluting or material strengths. So if you've ever tried to buy a box from EcoEnclose's website or anybody's website, what you would notice is that boxes have dimensions, they have the box style, and then they have what they call the fluting, which is a number-letter combination. What that number-letter combination is doing is telling you what kind of material is actually being used to make your box. And today we're here to demystify what those letters and numbers mean. And so I'll really talk today about our 5 flutings that we offer. We offer 23B, 32B, 32E, 32C, and 44C. So 5 different strengths. And we're going to talk about what those mean. So first, I'm going to talk about the number. And so we've got 23, 32, and 44. And regardless of what letter follows that number, what the number refers to is basically the strength of the liner board. So you'll see that every corrugate is made up of a liner board on top, corrugate fluting, so some, with the waves in the middle, and then the liner board on the bottom. Regardless of what's happening with the fluting, the liner board strength is what defines that number. And what it's really saying is, I'm picking up, this is a 32B strength right now. What it's really saying is if you laid a portion of that corrugate down this way, up and down, and you could put weight on top of it, how much weight can you put on it before it crushes? That's the ECT edge crush test. So for this 32B, you'd be able to put 32 pounds of weight, and that's how it would be rated before the whole corrugate would crush. So 23 would have 23 pounds, 32 pounds, 44 pounds. And so you can tell by the number that the higher the number, the stronger it is that the corrugate's gonna be, and then the stronger the box is gonna be. So that's a really important first part, so that's a number. Now we'll talk about the letter. And so we've got B flute, we've got E flute, and we have C flute. And what the corrugate, or what that letter is talking about is basically the amount of waves, the density and the number of waves that you're gonna see in between the top liner board and the bottom liner board. And it really, what it defines is like how much cushioning it's gonna have, how much you can sort of crush it on top, and also how thick it is. So 32B and 23B, which are the same, I've got a 23B and a 32B here, so you can see that if you weren't touching them, you would just see they look basically the same. That's because the B fluting is exactly the same on both. B flute is 1/8 of an inch tall, that's what this is. And E flute is very tiny, so you can see it's really, really, really dense. And E flute is a really thin box, it's 1/16 of an inch thin. And then we also have the C flute. And the C flute, you can see here, is the same. You can see it in this way. And that's 11/64. So it's our thickest flute. So what you can sort of think about is if you're trying to look for the strongest box you can with the most sort of thickest cushioning in its corrugate, you're going to go with the 44C, which is the 44, meaning that you can get a lot of weight on it, and it's C flute, which is the thickest. If you're looking for a really sleek box that's a little bit more of the retail style, you would probably look for E flute because that's 1/16 of an inch thick. So it's really a thin, sleek fluting, and it does bear, that 32E can bear 32 pounds of weight on it. All right, so now you know a little bit about fluting and numbers and letters. Now, how do you use that information to actually choose which fluting is best for which box? So typically what I'll say is when it comes to TL boxes or presentation style boxes, which are tab locking boxes and literature mailers, which are our most popular boxes, the first thing I'll say is for 23B, which is the weakest corrugate and that sort of thicker than E flute, thinner than C flute corrugate, that is like very much a utility fluting. So what I say to folks is if you can use it, great, because it's the lowest cost and it's the least amount of material. If you find that you have any concerns about its strength or its crushing, then go with something else. But it's there because we want to make sure people have a really cost-effective option. It's about 5 to 10% cheaper than your E and your C flutes. So for something like this, which is a 642 tab locking box, I think the 23B works great. You'll see it works fine. It's a small box, so you can't really crush the middle of it the way that you can with bigger boxes. It's got a lot of sturdiness to it. It's not gonna really, unless you put something incredibly heavy in it, which most people wouldn't, it's such a small box. 23B works great in this setting. That said, you can see it's a little bit like bulky in its design. That's just because it's 23B flute. So if you care a lot about style, and sort of sleekness in general, when you can, I would recommend the E flute, and this is an E flute box. So you can see that compared to a B flute box, an E flute box is a lot sleeker. So one would use an E flute box. I would always recommend E flute when design and aesthetic is really important to you and you're doing a medium to small sort of length and width box in the TL and LM style. And you'll see in the next section why I wouldn't recommend the E flute for large boxes. But the main issue is that because it's so thin, it can sort of start to bow, like the middle of it can bow very easily. That's not a problem in a box like this because you don't have a lot of surface area for that bowing to be a big deal. So your last fluting style for the tab locking and literature mailer style box, I've gone through the 23B and I've gone through the 32E, is the 32B. And you can see that visually, the 32B and the 23B look basically the same, which makes sense. They're both B flute. But the difference is more when you touch and feel it. And the 23B, you can't really see it feel it right now, but you can crush it with a little bit less strength, whereas you need a lot more strength to crush a 32B. That makes sense, 32 versus 23. That said, with a box that's small, like a 642 is, which I have right here, I personally don't think that in most cases you would need the added strength of the 32. So you might as well spend a little bit less and get the 23. But it's always good to order samples and test and feel them for yourself. So that's in these smaller boxes. So now we're gonna move on to bigger boxes. Great, so now we're gonna look at how the flutings look and feel and act in a larger box. So this is I would say this is a medium to large box. It's a 10 by 12 by 3 inch tab locking box. So, bear in mind that it's a medium sized box. So now if your box is even bigger, you're gonna wanna take the things that we talk about and apply them even more. So this is a 23B fluting for a TL box. This I think looks just fine, but what you'll find is you can crush it because it's that 23B. You can get that crushing in there. So for many businesses, it's not a huge deal, especially if what you're putting inside of it is a box. Like some people have a box that their product is in and then they're just making a box that fits it perfectly. That might be okay, or they're using a lot of void fill. Again, they're okay with that, the little bit of crushing that might happen as it goes in transit because they're getting a cheaper box. But that's something that you should bear in mind. Then you've got the 32E. This is that thinner flute that we talked about. So I think this is a beautiful box. I think it looks sleeker than this box. The thing to bear in mind, and this isn't maybe as pronounced in a box of this size, but as you get bigger and bigger, you can just start bowing a little bit in the middle. The fluting is thin. It makes it a little bit hard to construct a box that's this large in E flute. Again, the bigger and bigger you get, you can start bowing in the middle because of how thin that fluting is. And then your last option is 32B. So it looks and feels like that 23B, but in a box that's bigger and has that surface area where you can get some crushing, this doesn't crush as easily. It's just like a lot stronger. And so it's just a much better box if you start to really worry about, you want to make sure nothing looks like it's been crushed, and you want to really think about what it looks like when it gets to your recipient. When you get to boxes of these size, we start to really recommend 32B over 23B when that's something that's really important to you. Okay, well, we've talked about tab locking boxes and literature mailers, which are really similar. The same lessons apply. And now we're going to talk about RSC. This also applies to our FPF boxes. And what these are just the standard types of boxes that you typically will get in the mail if you order something from like Target. It comes in an RSC box. And typically these are designed for like strength and rigidity. That's really important. And so for these boxes, the fluting that we offer is 44C, 32C, and 32B. And so how do you choose? The typical lesson that I would give you is, or the advice that I would give you is, use 32B when you have a smaller box. We have a very popular box size, 555, 666, 777. People love those sort of small cube boxes. 32B can be a really good option there because if you have a box that small, you're probably not putting something that heavy in it, and you don't need as much of that structural integrity. As you get bigger, as these boxes are, you want to start looking more at your C flute. 32C is great for shipments that have 20, 25, 30 pounds in them. Anything that you're getting close to 30 pounds consistently or above, you want to start sticking with your 44C. And so hopefully I can show you on this video sort of this in action. So this is the 32B flute. You can sort of see it's thinner, which makes sense, it's that B flute. And put it down. And you can just sort of go on it. You can see it's just not super sturdy. You can see some crushing in it. It would work fine. Like let's say I was shipping toilet paper or paper towels or stuffed animals or clothes even. If you had a box like this and you're shipping a bunch of clothes, this could work just perfectly. And if it can work for you, it has the least amount of material and it's the most sustainable and it's going to be the most cost effective of these three. But as you start shipping heavier things, the 32C becomes important, or even the 44C. So most of our outbound shipments go out in a 32C box. Most of our outbound shipments are about 15 to 30 pounds, and we use this, and you can sort of see, like, I'm on it. You can't see it on video, but the corners are solid and it's working really well. So this is great for almost all large box RSC. The 32C works perfectly. And then the 44C is, let's say you're shipping something really heavy, and occasionally our shipments will get to almost 50 pounds, and that's when we start to always use the 44C. It is sturdy. Like this is not going to show any crushing or damage in transit, and it's going to work really well. So those are your different options across RSC, across TL boxes. Hopefully you have a little bit more of a visual sense of the difference of all the fluting, but we always say the best thing you can do is order free samples. So if you know the dimensions you want, think about ordering free samples in a couple different fluting styles so you can test, feel, and pick the exact right best one so that you are going to feel really proud of how you ship. Thanks so much.